Hi classmates! So I'm going to be telling you guys about the book I read called Listen to Me Good, The Story of an Alabama Midwife. And it was written by two authors, Holmes and Smith. Smith was the main character in the book, and I'll talk a lot about her, but she and another lady actually wrote the book together. And the way it was written was Holmes was kind of the interviewer, and Smith responded to questions, and so it was a lot of dialogue, and then Holmes would interject with comments about like the history of midwifery and medical terminology and different kind of supporting facts and knowledge. So the book celebrates African American midwives during the civil rights era. It's written basically to acknowledge the poverty, racism, and class differences amongst the black and white people during this time. So it is set in an Alabama town known as Greene County, and in this town there's quite a bit of discrimination between the black and white families, and that being said, the black families were in quite a bit of poverty. They didn't have access to health care like the white families did. They were often turned away and denied access to care, which I'll explain more in a little bit, but Margaret, or Miss Smith, is referred to, she's referred to Miss Smith by the black families and Margaret by the white families. She was a midwife who acknowledged these differences in class and poverty and was willing to deliver children free of cost to a lot of families. Didn't really make any money off of it, but obviously saw the need. So she said that a lot of the families that she dealt with were malnourished and overworked. So I will just go ahead and read the purpose of the book: to recognize African American midwives during the civil rights era, as I mentioned, and it further provides insight to the midwifery profession, providing readers with a knowledge and background about the roots of the profession. The theme incorporates midwifery into a larger context of racism and poverty, and like I mentioned, it's co-authored by the midwife and Holmes, who basically is a journalist. So, as far as my rating of this book, I would absolutely rate it a 5. I really enjoyed it, not only because of the raw honesty and the stories that were shared. They were pretty mind-boggling by themselves, but it also allowed me to learn about the history of midwifery and kind of set a foundation for the way I want to practice in the future. So it was really motivating, I would say. Sociological influences, I kind of mentioned these already, but ethnicity and economic status were the two main sociological influences that played a role in Mrs. Smith's career practicing as a midwife. I'll go ahead and share a story now. There was an African American female who was delivering, and she had eclamptic seizures, and she went to an all-white hospital, and the physician turned her away, and the nearest place that she could go was like 35 miles away, and she needed help immediately. And Miss Smith rode with her in the car on the way to this place, and the lady ended up delivering in the car, and everything was fine. Baby was fine, despite some traumatic experiences along the way. But it just kind of showed the disparity between white families and black families during this time. Let's see. Also, I mean, it was rare that you would find a black family that had a lot of money, but even if they did, the race ended up denying them access to health care. So those were the two main sociological influences that affected the way that things practiced in the time. Politically, not only did the white people have power, but it was specifically males at the time. In 1976, a law passed that outlawed all midwives, so this left Mrs. Smith and 150 other African American midwives without practice. They were actually threatened to go to jail if they did. The term midwife was redefined as old-fashioned, associated with poverty and segregation. In 1978, no new granny midwives were certified, and insurance regulations evolved, confining women to hospitals only. So those were some political movements that happened that certainly affected the way that they practiced. And lastly, cultural factors. I kind of took this as her morals and values, referring to Mrs. Smith, and she pretty much believed that everyone should have access to health care regardless of skin color or income or anything like that. So she had strong faith in her Christian religion, and she simply desired to do the best for every woman that she came across, whether black, white, rich, poor. So she was pretty much accessible to anyone and everyone. She delivered over 3,000 babies during her career, which is pretty amazing, and she did not lose one mother, which is pretty commendable considering at this time there wasn't a whole lot of medical access and, like I said, in the poverty and that kind of stuff. So it is a very, very great book. I would certainly recommend it to anyone, regardless of whether there was an interest in midwifery or not. It's pretty inspiring and a good story. So, yeah, that is about it. Enjoy! Thanks, bye!